Okay, everyone. Hi, I believe we are live. I am Sriya, the co founder and CEO of Persana AI. And for this week's webinar series, I am super excited to be having Pierre, the co founder of Icypeas, on here. Today, we'll be talking about how to find and verify emails at scale. And this is something Pierre is an expert at. And I know this is something that is the foundation of all outbound email contact data, which are topics that are heavily discussed on LinkedIn, and people have a lot of varying thoughts. So, just to kick it off, Pierre, if you'd like to give a quick introduction about yourself and what ICPs for anyone who might not know yet, that'll be awesome.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me, and hello to everyone. To give you a brief introduction about myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I created several companies in the past. The previous one was a communication agency, and for that company, it was very important to me to do a lot of prospection. So that's how I discovered the new ways of doing prospection, like the automated ways. And I was really truly amazed by the possibilities there. Um, and I started to create my own list, but I quickly figured out that actually the email enrichment tools at that time, like 4 or 5 years ago, they were not good enough to my eyes, at least, because I was forced to get rid of uh, half, or sometimes more than half of my list at that step. That was really a pity for me. So I decided with a few web developers, and especially my technical director at the time, Corentin, to try to create some scripts to go further than what the existing tools were able to allow at the time. And after a few years doing that, we just realized that we were able actually to really improve what were existing before. So we decided to quit our current company and to create a new one to offer as a SaaS service these new ways of finding emails. And that's how ICPs was born, actually. That was like 1 year ago. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's only 1 year ago that you started ICPs.
No, actually, it's 1 year ago that we released the service, but we were
Oh,
working on that like 2 years ago.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
That's still
yeah,
very young to like how, I mean, not an easy space to crack, definitely, and to become like a name brand in this space. I think one at the end of the day, your product like speaks for itself, right? Like people post a lot about like email verification and open rates and like deliverability, but I think it's just like if we're in like 1 year kind of being public with it, 2 years building it, that's an incredible like time to market with the product. So like kudos to you on that. And you were mentioning like you've been a serial entrepreneur. So I think it's like in have you seen that in like all your different businesses as well? Like emails and contact data is like so key and important. And what have you been your observations around that?
very often it's key, but not always. Sometimes you will prefer to use phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you target key decision makers in large companies,
Yeah.
probably to some extent it's better to use phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on who you're targeting.
Yeah.
And sometimes also in some businesses,
Yeah.
you don't have to do outbound prospection.
Mm-hmm.
You will focus more on inbound lead acquisition. So it really depends, but in general, very often, yes, email is the main channel.
Yeah. And then kind of going back to your journey building ICPs, how, I guess, I mean, like there's so many players in this market. Like, why would someone choose ICPs over like, there's like, the main brand is usually like Zoom Info or something like that, right? So it's like, how do you compete against that? And I'm sure you've heard this question millions of times. So wanted to understand your take on that as well.
Yeah, of course, we don't compete against ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo is an all-in-one solution. It
Hmm.
means that you can source leads, you can enrich leads, you can actually do your outreach within ZoomInfo. They have so many features that there is no competition.
Yeah.
Um, some people prefer to have all-in-one solutions, but they are average on
Mhm.
all steps.
Mhm.
And some other people, more expert people, sometimes prefer to uh, pick and cherry very precise solutions that are very good at one thing.
Mhm.
So that's why our main users today are lead gen agencies and other SaaS products like yours,
Mhm.
which integrates our solution, because they know that we are very good at just one thing, which is email enrichment, but we
Yeah.
don't do anything else. So
Yeah.
today it makes a lot of sense for an expert people to use, for example, ICPs in
Yeah.
combination with other expert tools. And
Mhm.
the way I see it is that Persona can be like the glue of all
Mhm.
these expert
Yeah.
solutions
Yeah.
when you want to automate workflows and
Yeah.
and be like faster in
Yeah.
switching to one tool to another one, or to also when you want to also create waterfalls. In this
Yeah.
case, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So,
like
so
bringing together different data providers and helping them work together as well. And I really like how you're like, we are just focused on being a point solution, because I think, especially like, I connect with hundreds of data providers and we have them on Persona, and I think one of the main things is that focus for the data provider. um, there's no way one data provider can be like the best at every single sort of data in the world,
yeah,
right? Like
and
there's
Zoom
no
Info, Zoom Info, for example, there are like thousands of engineers.
exact.
We are a very small team, so there is no way we can create the same kind of solution. It's not
Yeah.
our strategy.
Yeah.
But if you compare ICPs against other like data providers like us,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, for example, of
Yeah.
Find Email,
Mhm.
Prospeo, Drop Contact,
Mhm.
Enro, and so on.
Yeah.
In this case, what makes ICP special is one, the email discovery rate, which is really high, like
Yeah.
higher than those competitors, I believe.
Yeah.
They might deny that. It's always like a battle to try
Yeah.
to see who's the best. But
Yeah.
in the benchmark we do, and that we see that
Yeah.
have been done by others, very
Yeah.
frequently ICPs ranks first. And also we have a very unique capacity to bypass catch-alls. So
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone watching this video is aware of what the catch-all is, or should I
Yeah,
give
I think
a few
that
words?
sort of education is going to be super important. So, what is a catch-all?
Okay, so sometimes some mail servers are configured in a way which is said catch all. It means that when you send an SMTP request, so SMTP is the protocol to
Yeah.
transfer emails between mail servers, and when
Mhm.
you send a request to those mail servers to ask whether an email address exists or not, they will always answer yes or no, independently of the if the email exists or not. So they lie very often, and this is done to avoid people like us, like email finders,
Yeah.
to actually brute force and discover
Mhm.
emails. Yeah, so they are configured this way in catch-all mode, but we at ICPs discovered and worked at new ways of bypassing catch-alls.
Mhm.
So today, I believe on the market we have a very unique capacity to verify catch-all emails, and those emails are very interesting because they are usually untapped leads.
Mhm.
Because when an email is tagged as catch-all in an email finder, most often the sales don't reach out to this email
Yeah.
because they are afraid of hard bonds.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's very interesting to be able to have this capacity to bypass catchers. And maybe another unique selling point we have at ICPs is that we worked a lot on our infrastructure to
Mhm.
make email discovery really affordable. So
Yeah.
our credits are like very cost effective.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I think someone has a question. How do you is it how do you verify personal emails? Is there a way? Is there a strategy there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So we do verify personal emails.
Mhm.
but we don't find personal emails. We only find professional emails. We have
Mhm.
three modules: an email verifier module, an email finder module, and a domain scan module. So I can explain that further later. But with the email verifier, we are able to actually verify personal emails. But with the email finder, we won't work with personal emails, only with professional ones
Mhm.
to be
Got it.
GDPR compliant. So
Yes.
when you want to verify personal emails, the way we ICPs will work is that we'll use our engine to collect signals about the possible existence of this email. So first we'll crawl the web to see if we see this email using Google, Bing, and other search engine. If we find this email appearing on a web page, we'll try also to understand if this web page is old or new, because if the web page is old, the email might not be existing anymore. Then we will send SMTP requests to the mail server. For example, Gmail, we will send an SMTP request to the Gmail server
Hmm.
to ask if the email is existing or not.
Yeah.
And if it's a catch-all, we try to bypass that. And the way we work to bypass that is that we send not one but thousands of requests.
Hmm.
And by watching the difference between the um, the metadata and the time for the response, the time to response between all the requests, we
Yeah.
are able to distinguish between the lies and the truth.
Okay.
That's how we work, like
Yeah.
in a very simplified way.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the transparency. I think it's like, there are even providers sometimes that claim to find like personal emails, and is that even legal or compliant? Like, we want to make sure that we are not doing anything that would put your company at risk as well, right? If you are trying to find emails in a not safe way, and then verifying it, I think it's fine. So always making sure that the compliance part is there in your business, because any errors there could just shut it down. So I think that's super key as well. And I think now I'd love to kind of segue into showing how you can actually use ICPs along with Persona. And what is kind of your recommendations in terms of I know waterfall email enrichment is also like a big thing going on. What are your thoughts on that before I kind of like show it in Persona and things like that? What do you recommend doing waterfall, or in which cases do you recommend using waterfall? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, waterfalling is a very good idea if you want to increase your discovery rates.
Hmm.
There is no way one single provider can
Yeah.
match the kind of discovery rates you will get with a whole waterfalling system.
Hmm.
So it's obviously a good idea, but there is a downside. It will increase the number of credits you will consume.
Yeah.
So obviously you have to get that in balance,
Hmm.
and make sure that you build your waterfall in an optimized way.
Hmm.
To do that,
Yeah.
um, I would recommend to use ICPs as the first step
Hmm.
because we are very cheap.
Yeah.
We are one of the cheapest providers,
Yeah.
so it's better to find an email through us than through anyone else at first.
Yeah.
And then, if an email is not found by ICPs, you can go through other
Mhm.
providers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So it's
yeah,
like
definitely,
have
it's a
ICP be kind of like the first one. Um, because yeah, like people are talking about like, okay, to maximize coverage, let's use waterfall. But I think the downside could be that it could get very expensive very easily. Say if you are doing like right now, I'll show for like a list of 10, which is pretty small, but people are finding emails I know on Persona for like thousands at once, and that could start adding up, especially if you're doing the whole workflow and the credits together. So like just being mindful where the whole point of a waterfall is that like, hey, if you're able to find it in the first one, it's not going to go and ping the second provider, so you can save credits. You want to make sure as many as you can try to catch it with the first one, which could be ICPs, and then if there's some that ICPs or your first provider couldn't find, it'll go to the second one, and then if the second one couldn't find it, the third one. But you can imagine if you're running a waterfall where ICPs might be in like the last or third position, that could start getting very expensive.
yeah.
One thing on, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just for the people who are very budget sensitive,
Yeah.
if you use Persona with providers' API credentials.
Yes.
In this case, it might be interesting for you to look at what providers actually charge a credit, even if they don't find an email, because some of them do, and
Yeah.
some others, like ICPs, they don't charge you anything unless they find an email.
Yes.
So in this case, it can help you to like control your budget also,
Yeah.
to take this into account.
Yeah, and that's actually something also we have on our plan. Like, I think another option for people exploring, like, email providers, and I think that's one thing we're trying to encourage with Persona as well, is that you can try different email providers, and that way you can test ICPs, and you're like, hey, this is going to be my provider of choice. You can actually just straight up sign up for a direct ICPs plan, even getting it in bulk and, like, at a higher volume, working with ICPs for your rates, because I know some agencies send it at a very, very high volume. And then you can use our HTTP API connection to bring it in, or you can actually just use your own key for ICPs within Persona. So I think that's really cool, where you're getting kind of like the best rates in the industry, while also kind of being able to try out different providers. So if you haven't tried out ICPs yet, would definitely recommend. I think you can ping me or Pierre, or I think we're more than happy to give some sort of credits or things like that if you'd like to try it out. So for sure, just ping us, or if you, I think when you sign up for Persona today, you get a number of free credits. So if you haven't tried it out and you want to try it out, you can definitely check out ICPs. And just kind of going into how and where you can find using this waterfall enrichment and how to find ICPs. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here.
And while you're sharing your screen, maybe I can add a few words about waterfalling.
Yeah.
When you add up different providers, you
Mm-hmm.
might also be careful about the bounce rate of each provider.
Mm-hmm.
Some providers have a high bounce rate, while
Mm-hmm.
others have a low bounce rate.
Yeah.
I would recommend to use an email verifier on top of
Mm,
some email finders that actually have a high bounce rate. Otherwise, you will have a total bounce rate which is too high to
yeah.
send cold email campaigns.
Yeah.
But regarding ICPs, we decided to really work a lot on the bounce rate. So our average bounce rate is no more than 3%,
Mm,
which makes almost unnecessary to use an email verifier on top
yeah.
of ICPs.
That's really good.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like kind of
but
like a two-in-one product, because I know there are people sometimes just want to run credits on Persona to verify emails as well. So just kind of showing how I got here, you can just click get started. These are all my other different tables, different ways to bring in your data. So you can import data from Webhook, you can do a CSV, you can use our find people companies. I already have a table here and I was doing some enrichments. So to get this data, you just simply click on enrich data over here, and then we have a bunch of different, like, prospect enrichment. You can do web research. We have like AI, using GPT, Claude, all those good things. So I was just looking at some, like, company news, I believe, and then I found some people at that company, finding more contacts, and then getting to the email finding, which is what we're talking about in this webinar. You just click on find work email here. And what's great is that you can actually move around the different, you can choose which ones in the waterfall to do. So actually in this one here, I did use ICPs as my first one, and then I tried like another provider here. And what's great is that unless we find the email, it's not going to charge a credit on Persona. So that's like a really good thing. So you can see over here, you can add more providers. You can put in your own key for any of these. So if you have an ICP's account, you can just put in the key here. And that's, I think, like, really awesome, because, like, say you have a key for something, but you want to try something else, it's really flexible. And you can put ICPs as the first one to try to get a higher match rate as well. But we have a bunch of options for you guys to try out, and you can really, really, like, go hard with trying to get your like finding the work emails. But most of the times you don't have to. I think, like, how many recommended providers would you say in the waterfall? I think people usually run like two or three. Um, but
Yeah,
more than that is like overkill, I'd say.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I would say three, maybe four, if
Yeah.
you really want to like get the very last point
Yeah.
you can get by adding up. But beyond that, it's gonna be like too complicated to maintain
Yeah.
and to understand also how to optimize. So yeah, I
Yeah.
would say maybe 3 to 4.
Yeah, and then all the inputs, I put it here. You just have to input like their name and company website or domain to get these emails. So it's pretty straightforward and simple to get this data and use different email providers, use ICPs in your waterfall, and increasing those deliberate deliverability. Um, I see someone has a question. How did we find out about each other and collaborate? I think the GTM space is very small. I've realized. So I think people hear about different products, and I've actually heard about ICPs, like honestly, organically when I was, testing out different data providers ourselves, like even before reaching out to Pierre about a collaboration. We at Persona wanted to get the best data providers and give our users an option to try them out and also bring their own keys if they're already ICP's customers. And some of our customers actually requested ICPs, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, like this is something I should try out. Really liked, just organically really liked the product, and then really, Pierre and his team have been very seamless to work with and collaborate with. So it's been a great collaboration so far.
Thank you. On my side, I heard about Persona from former users of Clay
Hmm.
who switched to Persona for various reasons. Like
Hmm.
the main reasons maybe are like the UI of Clay might might be too complicated now, or is becoming more and more complex for some people, and also because it's very costly. It's a
Yeah,
very costly tool. So a lot of people are trying to find alternatives to
yeah,
Clay. And that's how some users that were using uh,
yeah,
Clay and ICPs within Clay
yeah.
started to recommend to me to have a look at the Persona.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think there's just I think platforms like and data providers now, like working in the GTM space in general, people want to see results. So I think that's where like it's great that we can collaborate together and people can see instead of oh, like I might not want to try a new data provider and things like that. You can try out ICPs, and we've seen that once people see the results, they end up signing up for like kind of like their own ICPs plans and like bulk plans and just bringing their own keys. So I love seeing that kind of transformation with people as well. And like this is really like finding and verifying work emails is the core. Like we always talk about, okay, like let's do mass emailing, personalization, all that stuff, but like I did a webinar earlier too, and we're always like the foundations have to be set up. Like you have to set up your like email warm up. You have to make sure you have data providers that you can trust and verify, and then you can kind of get into like the creative side of things. But these are table stakes before we kind of get into any of the like the other stuff about like lead enrichment and like research and all those other fun things. These are the foundations. So getting this set up is, if you're any SaaS company in the world, like you need to make sure you have the foundation set up. So deliverability, warm up, and making sure you're getting the right emails, because I've also been hearing that like, when you're not reaching the right emails, it's going to hurt your deliverability. Like it's such a cascading down effect. Like all the effort you're going to put in goes to waste, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, yeah, so I think that's kind of all we just wanted to chat about today, and I think it was just really educational to even just hear it again about the different things on how does like personal emails work, how do you verify different emails, what is catch all, and all these like technical terminologies. It's not just hey, I have a huge database, but it's a constant effort, right, to maintain and update and make sure you're getting the right emails and hearing like what goes on behind the scenes. So thank you so much, Pierre, for taking the time today and giving us the insight. I think this was very educational for us. and for us to make sure that we're able to do something so foundational and making sure that people are doing it right. So thank you so much, Pierre, for coming today and sharing your
You're
journey.
welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And if anyone has more questions like popping up later, do not
Yeah,
hesitate to ping, drop a line by email. I'm always happy to keep discussing and sharing insights.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm open to it.
yeah. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll catch you on the future webinars as well. Thank you. And you guys can, if you want to try out Persona and you want to try out ICPs in Persona, just give me a ping. You most likely always get some free credits to try things out, but if you need more, just ping me. Thank you so much, Pierre, for taking the time. You're
You're
based in
welcome.
France, right? Like, or in
Yeah,
the
I'm based in Paris. Yeah,
Thank you. I know it's a very odd time. So, everyone, thank you so much, Pierre, for accommodating with the time zones. We had a little back and forth on that. So, thank you so
sure.
much for taking the time and staying up later today as well.
See you.
See you. Bye bye.